Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I'm Tony Gerdeman here, as always, with Tom. Tom, how's it going?
Tony, it's a show that makes me a little bit sad. We are talking about a departed Buckeye who was a joy to cover, but also someone who was a recruit, like a really young recruit, not very long ago, and already done because he exhausted his eligibility. Not even that he played 3 years and was off the NFL. Sonny Styles played 4 full seasons at Ohio State. He was just a high school sophomore, it feels like 3 years
Mm-hmm.
ago, and now he's off to the NFL. And it's all making my back hurt, Tony. That's what's happening.
Yes, this was his senior year, but in another lifetime, this could have been his redshirt sophomore year had he not graduated early and then redshirted as a freshman. He could have 2 years left, and as we know, his last 2 years were his best 2 years. So just imagine what he'd be doing moving forward for the Buckeyes. Instead, everybody, you will now have to imagine life without the best tackler in college football, the highest graded linebacker in college football, as Sonny Styles goes off to the NFL, and he and Arvell Reese will both find themselves in the first round of the NFL draft. I'm just going to assume this is going to, without even looking, Tom, I'm going to assume this is going to be the. Oh, it's not going to be the first time that you had two Ohio State linebackers as first round draft picks, because I believe if A.J. Hawk and Bobby Carpenter were both in the same draft. I know they were both first rounders in the 05, '06 draft. I think both you might see both of these guys. A.J. Hawk went fifth, and Arvell Reese looks like he's going to be going ahead of that. And certainly Sonny Styles will go ahead of Bobby Carpenter, who was like 24, 28. Just a rare thing. This show is about Sonny Styles and Tom, how they're going to replace them. But first, they're going to miss him, and they can't replace him. And thanks, guys, for tuning in. Been a great time. If you want to go ahead and hit the thumbs up.
Yeah, sorry to kill the vibes here, but yeah, this is gonna be a guy who he was always a little bit underappreciated, and he was a beloved player at Ohio State. Son of a former Buckeye, uh, also named Lorenzo Styles, who was also one of two linebackers to go pretty high in his draft class, because Craig Powell went in the first round of the Browns and Lorenzo went in the second round of the Falcons, I think. So not
Third,
even
I
not
think.
even the first time Ohio State has lost two talented linebackers to the same NFL draft class, with one of them being named Lorenzo Styles. But this Lorenzo Styles Jr., he was never the biggest name on the defense, where Caleb Downs is there and Arvell Reese is there, and even guys like Caden McDonald and Davison Igbinosun and all these guys really there was a lot of guys who were sort of stealing the spotlight at times, but man, he was just so good and so consistent. He's maybe a little bit more ballyhooed than Jordan Fuller was, but I think we're going to be talking about him in the same way that we talk about Jordan Fuller, and trying to replace Jordan Fuller, and how just good and reliable and solid he was. But yeah, these are not going to be easy shoes to fill, and I think Ohio State's feeling pretty good about Payton Pierce, who was kind of the third linebacker in that last year, and so it's the two guys ahead of you left. So okay, you're going to have to take at least 1 to 2 steps forward, and then you've got a couple talented guys who were true freshmen on last year's team, and then in Riley Pettyjohn and T.J. Alford. And then they went into the portal and they brought in a really, really talented linebacker, Christian Allegro, out of Wisconsin. And then, I don't know, is Quay Russaw in this conversation? It feels like this is not a Quay Russaw conversation. This is
No,
more of
right.
a. I feel like it's the answer is probably some combination of the four guys we just talked about. But which of those guys is the most direct Sonny Styles replacement in your mind?
I would say Peyton Pierce, because he's going to stay at linebacker. You know what I mean? Like, he's going to stay as that middle linebacker. He's not going to necessarily need to move off. He's going to stay as an inside linebacker, where you saw Arvell Reese would sometimes be at linebacker, sometimes he'd be on the edge. I think you could see Christian Legro do that same sort of thing. So I view this as Peyton Pierce's position, because I fully expect him to have the green dot as the coach to player Mike guy getting the call from Matt Patricia. So I expect him to be that guy. He's the next in line, as we've seen over the years, from Cody Simon to Arvell Reese, and then Peyton Pierce was that third guy last year. And everybody, you're number three, and then you're among the top two, starting there. And so I expect that to be Peyton Pierce, but you've also got the younger guys in there as well. I'm still fascinated to see what's going on with Riley Pettyjohn. Where do they view him, and how is he impacted by the newcomers on defense? What's going on with everybody else? TJ Alford getting involved there, and what does this two deep look like? But I do believe as we start spring here in the next almost a month or so, you'll see Peyton Pierce there. And in terms of replacing Sonny Styles, there's replacing the production, which I think if you just look at the numbers, 82 tackles, 6.5 tackles for loss, 1 sack, I think the starting middle linebacker for Ohio State can do that, and I think they will. And yet what he was able to do defensively as this freakish athlete and could be asked to do different things, maybe that limited his numbers. And so maybe you'll see Peyton Pierce have better numbers because he's only asked to do this one thing. But everything that Sonny Styles was asked to do, he did it. He did it well. And whether that was just being the lone linebacker in the penny front, and it's like, okay, just make sure you've got your gaps and you tackle the guy. And he did. And can Peyton Pierce do that? I mean, that's what he's a tackling machine from Texas, right? So if you're going to go get a linebacker, Texas is not a bad place to go get him. And so he's waited his time. He's learned. There's this segment of Ohio State fans that just aren't believers in him, and maybe it's because Riley Pettyjohn had a good game against Grambling and did a couple things there. But you look at what the coaches do, and they've told you by their words and by their actions that this is Peyton Pierce's job.
Yeah, and Peyton Pierce was ahead of Riley Pettyjohn all of last year, and I want to put a pin in Riley Pettyjohn because we need to come back to him because I think he's worth a significant conversation here. But it does feel like Peyton Pierce has another year of experience in the defense. Was someone who was wearing the green dot when he was out there when it wasn't the starters, when the twos were out there. He was the guy who was the green dot, who was kind of the captain of the twos in some ways. He is someone who just kind of checks all the boxes, I feel like, for Ohio State in terms of what they're looking for, mentally, physically, all that in terms of that linebacker. He's not the biggest guy. He's not as big as Sonny Styles was, but I think he's going to be able to do a lot of the stuff that Sonny Styles was. I don't know that anyone is going to be able to do all the stuff that Sonny Styles did. Every time I think of Sonny Styles, I think back to Jim Knowles calling him the Swiss Army knife, just because he can just do everything. He came in, he was a safety, just kind of outgrew the safety position, but still could run pretty much like a safety and was just always in the right spot, always, getting the guy to the ground. That is not an easy thing to replace. But Peyton Pierce, I think, is going to do a really solid job of filling in that spot. I do think we need to talk about Riley Pettyjohn because Riley Pettyjohn, this feels like this is a great year for Riley Pettyjohn to be that third guy, to be the next guy up behind, whatever the combination of people are that are out there, to take on a bigger role. You saw him playing enough as a true freshman that it was like, okay, they like this kid a lot. They're seeing the same. Don't worry, Ohio State fans. The coaching staff is seeing the same stuff that you are seeing, and they are responding in the same way. But you don't have to throw him out there and have him be a true sophomore linebacker week 2 at Texas, playing 60 snaps and wearing the green dot. Like, you don't have to have him do all that. That's good. That is a good thing. If he's ready to take on a bigger role, great. But he doesn't have to take on a bigger role. That is a good thing. And I know that Riley Pettyjohn is someone that I think, and TJ Alford too, to a certain degree. I think Pettyjohn felt like he was a little bit of ahead of Alford last year, but I think you're going to have kind of, there's a lot about TJ Alford's game that I think Ohio State fans are going to like. I think he likes to hit people is one of the things that I've noticed about TJ Alford. So I think he's going to be one of those guys who's a fan favorite as well. But if those guys aren't forced to be out there as starters in 2026, That's a positive. They're back. They're back. The portal's closed. They have not scared them off. They're ready to take on whatever role they're ready for this year. If that's a bigger role than we're talking about right now, great. That's wonderful. But they don't have to. They don't have to be ready for week 2 at Texas, or, I was about to say week 4 or 5 at Iowa, but that's probably not as much of a concern. But you never know. But this is a positive thing for Ohio State. And if those guys are ready for a bigger role, great.
Yeah. The formula has worked over the years with this third linebacker easing them in, and no reason to think it won't. And it's going to be a fun competition to watch. Who is that guy? And is there a fourth linebacker? Are they getting involved? And how much has Matt Patricia decided? Like, well, I like what this guy does over here, so let's do this. I like what that guy does over here. And the Christian Allegro situation it will impact some things. I just think, boy, this is a pretty good problem to have. However, you got to play them, right? You can't. They've got to try to get them out there, to get them as much playing time as they can, while you try to keep them happy, so to speak, because this is a difficult spinning plates type of situation where you don't want to lose players to the portal. But as we know, you can play them and they'll still leave, or you can not play them and they'll still leave. But you also would like to know what you've got. And, they brought these two guys in terms of Alfred and Pettyjohn. They recruited the heck out of them. Certainly you don't want to lose them. So you're going to try to play them, but you're going to play them what they earn. And I think both players are going to be really fighting hard to earn. It's just, there's some other experienced players ahead of them, and maybe they won't stay ahead of them. We will see. But I think there are enough bodies here, enough talent here to certainly you're going to find a middle linebacker for Ohio State that can run the defense and make tackles. You're going to miss Sonny Styles based on everything that some of the stuff you didn't see. That sort of thing where he was able to cover some ground that other linebackers weren't. And maybe you might see some missed tackles here and there, or just guys that can't quite get to where he could, and it looks like a missed tackle. And it's like, no, that was just, Sonny used to be able to get to that. So, you got to, Tom, we're eventually going to do a show on, are the Buckeyes better at this position than they were a year ago? Middle linebacker, I'm going to say no, but also it wouldn't surprise me to see whoever is starting has better numbers than Sonny, unless they're doing more rotation.
Yeah, I think you could see more, bigger numbers. I mean, some of that might be based on the schedule and who you're playing, and the fact that it's more competitive games. Does that mean you're going to see the starters in there more, and you might pile up bigger stats that way, or does that mean you're going to have to
fewer
rotate
3
more?
and outs?
Yeah. So yeah, this is definitely going to be. I'm sure we will do that series, and I'm sure this will be one of those spots where it's a lot like safety, where boy, it's going to be hard to. It's going to be hard to replace Caden McDonald at the nose. It's going to be hard to replace Caleb Downs at that deep safety spot. But they are going to do what they can, and there are certainly plenty of good options here, and you can probably piece together a pretty good replacement. This is an Ohio State defense that, coming off of the greatest maybe season in Ohio State history in terms of a defense. Here's the thing about the greatest whatever in history. It's hard to do that year after year after year. It is a historically anomalous thing to have the greatest thing in history. So it is probably not realistic to expect the whole to be exactly quite as good the next year as well.
So you're saying it's going to be a down year for Ohio State. Great. Good job, Tom.
Now
Can't
you
be
have your show
the
title.
best season. Worst season in Ohio State history. All right, so there you go. Sorry for the downer there at the end. But if you have not yet, go ahead and hit that thumbs up if you're watching on YouTube. We'd appreciate that. And a 5-star rating or review, whatever. Anytime you got a chance, anytime you have the opportunity, you're sitting at work, you got nothing to do, TPS reports are due, but you're like, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to send a review instead. We appreciate that. And as you know, you can continue to find us at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Thank you all for tuning in, and we will talk to you all later.